Hey guys, tonight we are journeying to a very different world. A world of silk robes, silent corridors, and secrets that could topple an empire. We're stepping through the vermilion gates of the Forbidden City in Imperial China. But we're not here to follow the emperor or his concubines. We are here to walk in the soft-soled shoes of his most unique servants, the palace eunuchs. Theirs was a strange, silent world of immense sacrifice and, for a select few, unimaginable power. Your biggest challenge here wouldn't be a physical threat, but the crushing weight of loneliness and the terror of a single misspoken word. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It helps the channel find other people who, like us, enjoy falling asleep to these quiet, detailed histories. Go ahead and drop a comment below letting me know what city you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing our little community of night owls grow. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The world you know is made of dust and sweat. You are a young boy in a small, forgotten village in one of the northern provinces. The air is thick with the heat of a relentless summer, and the ground is cracked and thirsty. The rhythmic drone of cicadas is the only music you've ever known. Your family's plot of land has yielded less and less each year, and the faces of your parents are etched with a permanent, quiet worry. Famine is not a distant threat. It is a hungry ghost that sits at your dinner table, watching you share a meager bowl of millet porridge. One evening, after the sun has bled away, your father and your uncle are talking in low, serious tones. You are pretending to be asleep on your mat, that you hear every word. They are talking about you. They are talking about the palace. The word hangs in the air, heavy with a mystical quality. The palace is a place of legends, the home of the Son of Heaven, a place where the bowls are always full of rice and the robes are made of silk that shimmers like water. And there is a way in, a path for a boy from a poor family. It is a path of ultimate sacrifice, a desperate bargain with fate to become a eunuch, a servant of the imperial court. This was the grim reality for thousands of boys throughout the Ming and Qing dynasties. For a family on the brink of starvation, sacrificing the future of one's son was a terrible, but sometimes logical, gamble to save the rest. A successful eunuch could become incredibly wealthy and powerful, showering his family back home with riches they could only dream of. He could ensure they never went hungry again. He could elevate their status for generations. You would be the price for their survival. You hear your uncle mention a distant cousin who went years ago. They say he now serves in the Department of Palace Delicacies and wears embroidered robes. He sent money home once, a string of cash that seemed like a king's ransom. This is the dream they are selling themselves, the hope that justifies the cost. And what a cost it is. We won't dwell on the physical act. It is a gate you walk through, and you can never walk back. It is a price paid for a ticket to a different life. But in the village, they speak of it with a strange mix of horror and reverence. They have heard that because eunuchs are free from earthly desires, they are considered pure. This supposed purity makes them the only men trusted to guard the imperial harem, the sacred inner sanctum where the emperor's thousands of wives and concubines live. This is one of the great paradoxes of your new life. You will be seen as less than a man, yet simultaneously pure enough for the most sacred of duties. Historians still debate the degree of agency a boy like you would have had in this decision. For most, it was a choice made for them by desperate parents. You were a piece on the family chessboard, sacrificed for a strategic advantage, but some accounts suggest that ambitious boys, seeing no other way out of a life of grinding poverty, might have sought this path themselves, viewing it as the only available ladder out of the mud. Were you a willing participant in your own remaking, or a silent, terrified victim of your family's hope lying on your mat? You are probably too young to even understand the question. The decision is made. A man from a nearby town, a specialist, is consulted, fade data set. Your mother weeps silently when she thinks you are not looking, her hands busying themselves mending your only decent tunic. Your father avoids your eyes, his face a mask of grim determination. There are no grand farewells. One morning, before the sun is fully risen, you are led out of the village by your uncle. You don't look back. You have been told not to. You are walking towards the capital, Beijing. You are walking towards the forbidden city. You are walking away from everything you have ever been, towards something you cannot possibly imagine. The boy from the dusty village is already starting to fade, and a new being, a creature of the palace, is about to be born. The journey ends not at a grand palace gate, but at the door of a quiet, unremarkable courtyard house in a dusty lane of Beijing. This is the waiting room, the antechamber to your new life. Other boys are here, all with the same wide, terrified eyes, all from villages like yours. You don't speak to each other. There is nothing to say. You are all here for the same reason, standing at the edge of the same cliff. The man who runs this place is not a palace official. He is a specialist, the Naifar. He is a private contractor in a grim but lucrative trade. He is a quiet man. His hands are steady. This is not an act of passion or cruelty for him. It is a craft passed down through generations. He is the gatekeeper, and his blade is the key. You are led to a small, clean room. It smells of incense and bitter herbs. The windows are papered over. The world outside is muffled. This is it. This is the moment the whispers in your village warned you about. The moment of the pure cleansing. There is a before, and then there is an after. The time in between is a mercy of blankness, a space your mind refuses to fully record, filled only with a sharp finality and then a long, slow fade into a feverish darkness. You wake up on a pallet in a long, dim room. The first thing you are aware of is a deep, hollow ache. It's a constant, throbbing presence that has replaced a part of you. You are weak, weaker than you have ever been, and a burning fever makes the world swim. This is the second gate. You must pass through the gate of survival. The procedure itself was only the beginning. The real danger is now, in the days that follow. Infection is the silent enemy that stalks this room. The mortality rate was shockingly high. For every boy who successfully healed and entered the palace, many others succumbed to fever, blood loss, or gangrene. You see it happen. You hear the delirious cries of the boy on the mat next to you fade to whimpers, and then to silence. The next morning, his mat is empty. No one says a word. It is a stark, brutal lesson in the stakes of this gamble. Your survival is not guaranteed. It is a matter of luck, of a strong constitution, and perhaps of the efficacy of the strange, dark poultice the specialist applies to your wound each day. Historians and medical experts still debate the specific techniques and durable remedies used in this process. Was the foul-smelling paste applied to you a genuinely effective antiseptic, a piece of forgotten folk medicine, or was it pure ritual, its power lying only in the belief of the practitioner and the patient? The methods were shrouded in secrecy, a closely guarded trade. The knowledge died with the last of the Naifars. Days bleed into weeks. You learn to lie perfectly still. You sip the thin, tasteless rice gruel they bring you. Slowly, ever so slowly, the fire of the fever recedes, and the deep ache softens to a dull, permanent reminder you have survived. You are one of the lucky ones. When you are finally strong enough to sit up, an old eunuch from the palace visits the house. He inspects you and the other survivors with a cool, dispassionate eye. He is not looking at you as a boy, he is looking at you as an investment, a potential new cog in the vast palace machine. Then comes the strangest ritual of all. You are presented with a small, sealed porcelain jar. Inside, preserved in salt and drugs, is what was taken from you. This is your bell, your treasure. It is the most important object you will ever own. It is your proof of sacrifice, the certificate of your transformation. You will need it to be formally registered as a palace eunuch. More importantly, you will guard it for the rest of your life. It is believed that when you die, you must be buried with your bow, so that you can be reincarnated as a whole man in the next life. It is your hope of restoration, your ticket back to manhood in the great cycle of existence. You hold the heavy jar in your trembling hands. It is the physical manifestation of your loss and your only key to the future. The boy from the village is well and truly gone now. You have been emptied. You have been cleansed. You are a clean person, a blank slate, ready to be written upon by the intricate, merciless rules of the Forbidden City. You and the other survivors, a small, quiet band of remade boys, now simply wait for the call to finally enter those vermilion walls. The call comes on a crisp autumn morning, an ornate pallid noon, carried by four grim-faced servants. Arrives at the courtyard house. The old eunuch you met before steps out. He doesn't smile. He inspects you and the handful of other survivors one last time, his gaze lingering, as if checking for flaws in a piece of pottery. You are all dressed in identical, ill-fitting tunics of coarse blue cotton. Your heads are shaved, and you clutch your small porcelain jars. Your bow, as if they were the only solid things in a spinning world. You are not led through the main gates of the Forbidden City. You are taken to a smaller, less conspicuous entrance, a service gate tucked away in the massive northern wall. The gate itself is a heavy, studded door, painted a deep, imperial red. As it groans open and you step across the threshold, the sounds of the city outside the merchant's calls. The rumble of carts are instantly cut off, replaced by an unnerving, profound silence. You have entered another realm. The sheer scale of the place is disorienting. You are in a vast, sprawling labyrinth of courtyards, halls, and covered walkways. Everything is built on a monumental scale, designed to make you feel small and insignificant. The rooftops are a sea of gleaming yellow tiles, the color reserved for the emperor. The walls are red. The courtyards are paved with gray flagstones, and everywhere you look, there are intricate, symbolic carvings of dragons, phoenixes, and mythical beasts. The air itself feels different still, heavy, and scented with the faint aroma of old cypress wood and blooming chrysanthemums. You are led to a drab, gray brick building in a remote corner of the palace complex. This is the office of the Department of the Palace Eunuchs, the central bureaucracy that will govern every aspect of your life from this day forward. Here, you undergo your final transformation. You cease to be the boy your parents named. That name is taken from you, erased. You are given a new name, a palace name. It's a simple, functional name, something like Little and Little Peace or Little Lee Little Strength. It is a name without a past, without a family tree. It marks you as palace property. Your bow is inspected and registered, and then handed back to you for safekeeping. You are now officially on the rolls. You are a eunuch of the lowest rank, a novice. Your new life begins at the absolute bottom of a dizzyingly complex hierarchy. The eunuch establishment was a parallel government within the palace, with its own departments, ranks, and career paths. There were thousands of eunuchs, and every single one had a place in the pecking order. At the top was the director of ceremonial, a figure of immense power who controlled promotions, punishments, and had the ear of the emperor himself. Below him were the heads of various departments: the Department of Palace Servants, the Department of Imperial Utensils, the Department of Palace Delicacies, and dozens more. As a novice, you are nothing. You are assigned to do the most menial, grueling tasks. You will sweep the endless courtyards, your broom scratching against the flagstones from before dawn until after dusk. You will carry heavy buckets of water from the palace wells. You will haul coal for the braziers that heats the imperial chambers in winter. The work is back-breaking and monotonous, designed to instill discipline and break any remaining spirit of individuality. You live in a communal dormitory, the long, bare room filled with wooden sleeping platforms. The conditions are crowded and Spartan. Your possessions consist of 2 sets of coarse robes, a bowl, and the precious jar containing your bow. which you hide carefully under your palate. Here, you learn your first crucial lesson of palace survival. You are surrounded by rivals. Every other boy in this room is just as desperate and ambitious as you are. They are your colleagues, but they are also your competition for the slightest favor, the smallest promotion. A kind word from a senior eunuch can be a lifeline. A misstep can mean a brutal beating or a reassignment to an even worse job, like cleaning the palace latrines. Here's a small detail that encapsulates your new reality. You are taught never to say the word Reed Hong, because it sounds too similar to the word for emperor Hong in some dialects. You must refer to it as scarlet. You are taught never to let your shadow fall upon the emperor or his family. You must learn to walk silently, to breathe quietly, to make yourself as small and unobtrusive as possible. Your life is now governed by 1,000 tiny, unspoken rules, and breaking any one of them can have dire consequences. Historians debate the formal structure of eunuch training. Was there a formal school for new recruits? Or was it a more informal system of apprenticeship and on-the-job learning? The evidence suggests it was mostly the latter. Your real education would come not from a classroom, but from the old eunuch you were eventually assigned to serve. He would be your master, your mentor, and your tormentor, and he would teach you the silent, brutal rules of the game. You are no longer a boy from a village. You are a nameless, faceless apprentice in the service of the Son of Heaven, and your long, slow climb up the slippery ladder of the palace has just begun. The days of hauling water and sweeping courtyards blend into a single, aching blur. This initial period of hard labor isn't just about getting the chores done, it's a filtration process. It's designed to weed out the weak, the lazy, and the rebellious. If you can survive this, if you can show you are diligent, obedient, and utterly devoid of complaint, you might be chosen for the next step, an apprenticeship. This is where you begin to learn the real rules of the palace, the silent etiquette that governs every interaction. These rules are not written down in any manual. They are a complex and oft uncontradictory set of traditions, superstitions, and power dynamics that you must absorb through observation and painful experience. To fail to learn them is to remain a drudge for the rest of your life. Or worse. The first and most fundamental rule is about your physical presence. You must learn to move through the opulent halls and serene gardens like a ghost. Your steps must be silent on the polished stone floors. You are issued soft-soled cloth shoes for this very purpose. When you stand, you must stand with your head bowed and your hands clasped respectfully in front of you. Your eyes must always be downcast. To look directly at a member of the imperial family is an act of shocking insolence. You learn to see the world through your peripheral vision, to navigate by watching the swish of a silk robe or the glint of a jade ornament. Your voice is another tool that must be carefully controlled. You are taught to speak only when spoken to, and to answer in a low, respectful monotone. You must never raise your voice in anger or excitement. Your words should be concise, humble, and non-committal. You learn to master the art of the deferential phrase, peppering your speech with your humble servant thanks, or begging your majesty's pardon. The goal is to convey information without expressing a personal opinion, to be a conduit, not the source. Then there are the rules of service. You learn that everything has a precise and unchangeable ritual. When serving tea, you must hold the cup with both hands, at a specific height. The handle must be turned to a specific angle. When opening a door for a superior, you must do so with a certain posture, backing away without ever turning your back on them. When lighting a lantern, you must hold the flame at the correct distance from the wick to avoid even the faintest puff of smoke. These are not just tasks, they are performances of deference. Any deviation is a sign of disrespect or incompetence. A particularly telling rule involves your own body. You are in a constant battle against human smells. Eunuchs were often associated with a faint odor of urine due to the nature of their physical alteration, making them prone to incontinence. This was a source of great shame. You learned to wash fastidiously and use fragrant powders or sackets of herbs hidden in your robes to mask any scent. To be unclean in the presence of the imperial family was an unforgivable offense. This constant anxiety about your own body, about its potential to offend, becomes a part of your daily existence. Historians and memoirists debate the origins of many of these arcane rules. Were they ancient traditions passed down for centuries, or were they often the arbitrary whims of a powerful eunuch or concubine that, over time, solidified into palace law? For example, one emperor might have had a particular dislike for the color green, and for the duration of his reign, any eunuch acquiring even a hint of green would be severely punished. This personal preference would become a life or death rule for the servants, only to be completely forgotten under the next emperor. You had to be a master of reading the subtle shifts in the political and personal winds. This silent code is a language of power. Every gesture, every word, every moment of silence is a communication of your status and your understanding of the hierarchy. A senior eunuch can destroy a junior with a single, disapproving glance. A concubine can signal her favor or displeasure by the way she accepts a cup of tea from your hands. You are living in a world of high-stakes pantomime, where the unsaid is always more important than the said. You watch the older eunuchs. You see how they bow just a little bit lower to one official than to another. You see how they position themselves just outside a room where an important conversation is happening, close enough to hear, but far enough to seem uninvolved. You see how they can communicate a whole paragraph of information to each other with a single, subtle flicker of the eyes. This is the language you must master. It is a language of shadows and whispers, and it is the key to your survival, and perhaps even your advancement in this beautiful, terrifying, and silent world. After months of proving your worth through mindless toil, the day finally comes. You are summoned by a mid-level administrator. He looks you up and down, not with cruelty, but with the weary indifference of a man who has performed this task 1,000 times. He tells you that you have been assigned. You are now the personal apprentice to a senior eunuch named Wei. You are lead to a small, private set of rooms in a quiet corner of the palace. This is a significant step up from the noisy, communal barracks. The air here is still and smells of dried herbs and old books. Seated at a small, dark wood table, meticulously inspecting a scroll, is an old man. This is Wei. He is ancient, his face a web of fine wrinkles, his skin as thin and translucent as old paper. His back is stooped, and his hands are gnarled with age, but his eyes are sharp and intelligent. He is what you might become if you are very, very lucky, then very, very careful. He is an old ghost, a survivor of multiple emperors, a living library of palace secrets and forgotten intrigues. Your new life is one of absolute servitude to this man. You are his hands, his feet, and his shadow. You will wake before him to heat the water for his morning tea. You will prepare his meals, carefully following his exacting tastes. You will wash his robes, mend his shoes, and keep his small quarters spotlessly clean. You will stand silently behind him when he receives visitors, ready to pour tea or fetch a scroll at a moment's notice. That night, you will sleep on a simple mat on the floor by the door to his room, ready to answer his call at any hour. This is not slavery in the way the thralls of the Viking Age experienced it. This is an apprenticeship. Wei is now your shifu, your master teacher. Your relationship is modeled on the Confucian ideal of a scholar and his disciple, or a craftsman and his apprentice. He has absolute authority over you. He can have you beaten for the smallest infraction, a clumsy gesture, a forgotten instruction, a moment of inattention. The beatings are a part of your education, designed to carve the rules of the palace into your very bones. But he also teaches you. His methods are indirect and often cryptic. He doesn't sit you down for formal lessons. He teaches by example, by criticism, and by asking you questions. After a visitor leaves, he might casually ask, "Little Anne, did you notice the mud on that official's boots?" If you say no, he will scold you for your lack of observation. If you say yes, he will follow up, And what does that tell you? He is teaching you to see beyond the surface, to understand that the official, despite his fine robes, must have walked a long way and was not granted a pallid noon, a subtle sign of his current standing at court. He teaches you the art of memory. He will have you listen to a conversation and then demand you repeat it back to him verbatim. Hours later, he is training you to be a reliable recorder of information. He teaches you about the intricate network of family alliances that connects the various concubines, the political factions among the court officials, and the long-standing rivalries between different eunuch departments. This is information you can't find in any book. It is the living, breathing political map of the Forbidden City, and he is passing it on to you. Here's a peculiar detail of your apprenticeship. You learn to read Wei's moods not from his words, but from the way he handles his pet crickets. Like many high-ranking eunuchs, Wei cultivates fighting crickets in a small, ornate clay pots. When he is pleased, he might spend an hour carefully feeding them with a tiny brush. When he is anxious or angry, he will ignore them completely. The crickets become a barometer of his state of mind, a silent signal you must learn to interpret to avoid his wrath. The nature of these master-apprentice relationships is a subject of much interest for historians. While many were certainly abusive and exploitative, some accounts suggest that genuine, albeit complex, bonds of affection could form, denied the ability to have their own children. Some senior eunuchs looked upon their apprentices as surrogate sons. They would protect them, guide their careers, and bequeath them their wealth and property upon their death. This eunuch family was a crucial support system. Your shifu could be your greatest tormentor, but he could also be your only ally, your only hope for a future. You live in a state of constant, focused tension. Your mind is a sponge, soaking up every detail, every nuance, every whispered word. You learn to anticipate Wei's needs before he expresses them. You learn which topics to avoid, which people to treat with extra deference, and when the safest course of action is to simply blend into the woodwork and become invisible. You are being forged in the crucible of one man's personality, shaped into the perfect instrument of service. Your own personality, your own desires, your own thoughts, they are being systematically erased and replaced with the skills and knowledge needed to survive. Under Wei's demanding tutelage, you begin to master the most essential and paradoxical skill of your profession, the art of invisibility. This isn't about hiding or being physically absent. It's about being profoundly present, seeing everything, hearing everything while being perceived as nothing more than a piece of furniture, a silent fixture of the room. This skill is the foundation upon which all eunuch power is built. Your training starts with physical discipline. Wei forces you to practice standing absolutely still for hours on end. Your head bowed, your breathing shallow and even. He places a full bowl of water on your head, and you must stand there until the incense stick burns out without spilling a single drop. This teaches you stillness and control over your own body. It's a form of moving meditation, emptying your mind of everything but the task at hand. You are not a person, you are a statue, a silent guardian. Next, you learn to manage your gaze. Your eyes must never be seen to be actively watching. You are taught to keep them downcast, fixed on a point on the floor, a few feet in front of you. But from this seemingly submissive posture, you learn to use your peripheral vision with incredible acuity. You can track every person who enters or leaves a room, register the subtle shift in a courtier's expression, or note the trembling of a hand reaching for a teacup, all without ever lifting your head. Your world becomes a wide, blurry stage upon which you can see all the actors without ever appearing to look at them. You perfect the art of the silent step, your cloth-soled shoes gliding over lacquered floors and wool carpets. You learn the precise acoustics of the palace, knowing which floorboards creak, which doors groan, and how to use the rustle of your own silk robes to mask the sound of your movement. You can enter a room where the emperor is in a private meeting, replace a burnt-down candle, then leave again, without the occupants ever consciously registering your presence. You are a whisper of movement, a fleeting shadow, This invisibility is a form of camouflage, and it allows you to become a passive collector of secrets. Because people do not perceive you as a full person, they forget you are there. They will speak more freely in your presence than they would in an empty room. Because you are less than an empty room, you are a functioning part of the scenery. Standing behind a card screen while fanning a noble lady, you might overhear a critical piece of gossip about a rival concubine. While serving wine at a banquet, you might catch a whispered comment between two ministers about their dissatisfaction with an imperial decree. This brings us to a strange, specific technique known as hiding in plain sight. A high-level eunuch needed to be able to deliver a message or a warning to an official in a crowded court setting without anyone noticing. This was done through a coded system of gestures. A slight adjustment of his hat, the way he held his fly whisk, or a particular way of folding his hands inside his long sleeves could convey a complex message. The emperor is in a foul mood today. Do not broach the subject of the Western campaign, or your rival is plotting against you. Be on your guard. It was a secret language of the body, a silent conversation happening in the midst of the emperor's court. The psychological toll of this constant self-effacement is something historians can only speculate on. What does it do to a person's sense of self to spend their entire life trying to be invisible? You are trained to suppress every personal reaction, to school your face into a mask of placid indifference. You might hear a joke and feel the urge to smile, but you must not. You might witness an act of cruelty and feel a surge of anger, but your expression must remain blank. You are a vessel, a mirror, reflecting nothing of your own. This must have created a profound sense of detachment, a feeling of being a spectator in your own life. Your master, Wei, is a master of this art. He can stand in the corner of a room for an entire afternoon, so still and silent that even you, who are watching him intently, sometimes forget he is there. He has achieved the eunuch's ideal state to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. He is a ghost in the machine of the empire. He drills this into you relentlessly. One day, you are fanning him as he reads. You think he is completely absorbed in his scroll. Your mind wanders for a moment, and your gaze drifts up to a beautifully painted bird on the ceiling. Without looking up, Wei's voice, as dry as dust, cuts through the silence. The ceiling is not your concern, little Anne. Your concern is the cup, the fan, and the fly that lands on my sleeve. Be here. Be nowhere else. It's a sharp, painful lesson. Your invisibility requires a state of hyper-awareness, a total focus on the present moment and the immediate environment. It is not about being absent, but about being so completely present that you disappear. Years pass under wise tutelage. The calluses on your hands from sweeping have softened, replaced by the nimble dexterity required to handle delicate porcelain on ancient scrolls. You have mastered the art of invisibility. You are no longer a clumsy novice, but a competent, silent servant. And now, Wei decides you are ready. Your apprenticeship is over. You are to be given your first real assignment, a position of immense trust and even greater danger. You are being transferred to the service of the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager is the Emperor's mother, the mother of the nation. She is one of the most powerful figures in the Forbidden City. While she holds no official political power, her influence over her son, the Emperor, is immense. She is the matriarch of the Imperial clan, and her favor can make a career, while her displeasure can mean ruin, exile, or quiet death. To serve her is to stand at the very center of the web of power. You are brought to her residence, the Palace of Compassion and Tranquility. It is a world away from Wei's humble quarters. Here, the air is thick with the scent of expensive sandalwood incense and rare orchids. The rooms are filled with priceless antiques, bolts of shimmering silk, and exquisitely carved jade. The silence here is different, heavier, charged with a latent, feminine power. You are now one of dozens of eunuchs assigned to her personal staff, but your role is specific. You are a chamber eunuch. Your duties are intimate and constant. You will be responsible for her daily routine, overseeing the preparation of her special medicinal teas, ensuring her rooms are kept at the perfect temperature, and attending to her during her meals, standing by to pass a dish or refill her cup. You will be one of the last people she sees at night and one of the first she sees in the morning. You will become a shadow at her side. Serving an imperial woman is a completely different challenge from serving an old eunuch-like way. The Empress Dowager is a master of subtle communication and unspoken commands. You must learn to read her moods from the slightest change in her tone of voice, the way she taps her long, lacquered fingernails on the arm of her chair, or the choice of hairpin she wears in her elaborate hairstyle. Ace eye could be a sign of boredom, or it could be a signal of profound displeasure with a court official's proposal. Your job is to interpret these signs correctly, and to fail is to invite disaster. Dear, you witness the true nature of power in the inner court. The Empress Dowager does not issue commands, she expresses wishes. She might casually mention to you, while arranging flowers, that she finds the new Minister of Rights to be a bit too loud. That single, seemingly innocuous comment, when repeated by you to a senior eunuch, will travel through the palace grapevine like lightning. Within days, the loud minister will find himself reassigned to a remote border post, his career effectively over, without the Empress Dowager ever having to issue a formal order. You learn that in this world, a whispered word is more potent than a shouted command. A strange and specific part of your new duty is story reading. The Empress Dowager is often bored. In the long afternoons, she might command you to read to her from classic novels or histories. Your voice must be steady and clear, but completely devoid of emotion. You are a narrator, not a performer. You read tales of heroic generals and tragic lovers. Your voice a calm, monotonous drone that serves as a backdrop to her private thoughts. This is a position of strange intimacy. You are a voice in her ear, a companion in her solitude, yet you remain a complete non-entity. The relationship between a powerful imperial woman and her trusted eunuchs is a fascinating area of historical speculation. In a world where she is surrounded by sycophants and people who want something from her, her eunuchs are her only constant, non-threatening male companions. They are her confidants, her messengers, and the executors of her will. A bond of genuine trust and even affection could develop. She might ask for your opinion on the quality of a new batch of tea, a small but significant gesture of acknowledging your existence as more than just a servant. But this intimacy is a double-edged sword. To be the keeper of her secrets makes you valuable, but it also makes you dangerous. If she were to fall from power, you, the repository of her private thoughts and schemes, would be one of the first to be eliminated by her rivals. You learn to navigate the fierce rivalries of the inner court. The concubines are constantly jockeying for the Empress Dowager's favor, and they will try to use you as a pawn, feeding you false rumors or trying to glean information from you. You must become a master of polite, smiling deflection, revealing nothing, promising nothing. Your loyalty is to one person and one person only, the old woman who sits on the phoenix throne. You are no longer just little Anne, the apprentice. You are now the Empress Dowager's eunuch. Your identity is tied to hers. Her power is your protection, and her whims are your law. You are closer to the sun than you have ever been, but you are also keenly aware that its warmth can scorch you in an instant. In your new role, you become deeply embedded in the life of the inner court, a world populated almost entirely by women. The Empress Dowager, the Empress, the consorts, the concubines, and thousands of palace maids. And yet, your own social world, the one that truly matters for your survival and advancement, is the one you share with the thousands of other eunuchs. It is a strange and contradictory society, a world without women, without family, without children, yet one that is bursting with its own unique forms of connection, loyalty, rivalry, and even a kind of love. The eunuch community was its own universe, governed by its own complex social rules. Friendships or alliances were the most crucial currency. You could not survive alone. You needed a network. You needed friends in other departments, a contact in the Imperial kitchen who could let you know which official was receiving the Emperor's favor based on the dishes ordered for him, or a friend in the palace stables who could tell you which general was being prepared for a new campaign. Information flowed through these personal networks, and being out of the loop was a death sentence. These friendships were often formalized through a ritual of becoming sworn brothers. You and another eunuch would pledge eternal loyalty to each other. Often in a small temple ceremony, you would address each other as brother, share resources, and promise to protect each other from palace intrigues. This bond was taken incredibly seriously. In a world where you had no blood relatives to rely on, your sworn brother was your family. He was the one who would look out for you, defend your name, and, if you fell from grace, perhaps be the only one to secretly bring you food or medicine. But for every bond of brotherhood, there was a dozen feuds of bitter rivalry. Ambition was the driving force of your world. Everyone was competing for the same limited number of promotions, the same positions of favor. These rivalries could be vicious and last for decades. They were not fought with swords, but with whispers, rumors, and carefully laid traps. A rival might bribe a palace made to accidentally spill tea on a document you were carrying, making you look incompetent. Or they might start a rumor that you spoke disrespectfully of a high-ranking consort. The lie, once spoken, was almost impossible to retract, and it could follow you for the rest of your career. These rivalries often coalesced into factions, known as dang. A powerful senior eunuch would gather a following of loyal juniors, forming a political bloc. The palace was often riven by conflicts between these different eunuch factions, each trying to place their members in key positions and gain control over the flow of information to the emperor. As a junior eunuch, you had to choose your allegiance carefully. To be unaffiliated was to be vulnerable. But to back the losing faction in a power struggle could mean being purged along with your patron. Here's a small, poignant detail about their social lives. Denied the ability to have families, eunuchs poured their emotional energy and their wealth into other things. One common outlet was the adoption of elaborate hobbies. Many became renowned connoisseurs of opera, porcelain, or painting. They would host elegant parties for their fellow eunuchs in their private quarters, where they would compare rare teas, admire new artworks, or listen to performances by the palace opera group. These events were a chance to display one's culture and wealth, and to forge social bonds in a refined setting. It was a way of creating a rich, meaningful life within the gilded cage. The nature of emotional and physical intimacy between eunuchs is a deeply sensitive and poorly documented subject. The official Confucian ideology of the court would have condemned any such relationships. However, in a closed, all-male society where individuals were starved for affection and physical comfort, it is almost certain that deep, romantic, and physical bonds formed between some men. These relationships would have been the most closely guarded secrets of all, hidden under the guise of sworn brotherhood. Memoirs from the last eunuchs are mostly silent on this, making it a realm of historical speculation. But to assume such connections didn't exist is to deny a fundamental aspect of human nature. Your relationship with your old master, Wei, is a perfect example of this complex web of connection. Though you now serve the Empress Dowager, you are still considered his man. You visit him regularly, bringing him small gifts and, more importantly, valuable information from the inner court. He, in turn, provides you with guidance and political protection. Your success reflects well on him, and his network is your safety net. This is the unwritten law of eunuch patronage. It is a bond that is part father-son, part master-apprentice, and part political alliance. It is the closest thing to family we will ever have. So while you spend your days in a world of feminine power, your nights and your moments of freedom are spent navigating a purely masculine society, one defined not by bloodlines, but by loyalty, ambition, and the shared silent understanding of a singular, irreversible sacrifice. Your days in the palace of compassion and tranquility are a study in quiet routine. You have become a master of the small, intimate tasks that make up the Empress Dowager's life. One of your primary duties, and one of the most deceptively simple, is serving tea. But you quickly learn that in the Forbidden City, a teacup is never just a teacup. It is a symbol, a tool, and sometimes a weapon. The ritual begins long before the tea is served. You must first know which tea the Empress Dowager desires at that particular time of day. Does she want a delicate, green dragon well tea to refresh her in the afternoon, or a dark, fermented pui, RH tea to aid her digestion after a heavy meal? Choosing the wrong one is a sign of inattention, a small failure that will be noted. Then there is the water. It cannot be any water. The palace has its own wells, but the finest water for tea is believed to come from specific natural springs outside the city, or, in some cases, from collected snowmelt from the first fall of winter. It is your job to ensure that a fresh supply of this special water is always on hand. To serve tea made with common well water would be a grave insult to your mistress's refined palate. The preparation itself is a performance. You must use the correct teapot, a tiny, exquisite vessel made of purple zinc that has been seasoned over years of use. The water must be heated to the precise temperature to cool, and the leaves will not open properly. Too hot and you will scorch the delicate flavor. You learn to judge the temperature not with a thermometer, but by listening to the sound of the water as it heats the shrimp eyes, the crab eyes, and finally the fish eyes, the small, rapid bubbles that indicate it is ready. You rinse the pot in the cups with hot water to warm them. You measure the tea leaves with a carved bamboo scoop. You perform the first quick infusion, the washing of the leaves, which is immediately discarded. Only then do you proceed with the real infusions, pouring the fragrant, steaming liquid into a tiny porcelain cup no bigger than your thumb. The act of serving is the final, critical step. You must present the cup with both hands, your head bowed. The Empress Dowager might take it from you, or she might simply gesture for you to place it on the small table beside her. This single gesture is fraught with meaning. If she takes it directly, it is a sign of contentment. If she has you place it on the table, it could mean she is preoccupied, or it could be a subtle sign of displeasure. You learn that the teacup is a true love diplomacy. When the Empress Dowager has a meeting with a high-ranking official, your role is critical. You will serve the tea. If the meeting is going well, she may command you to refill the official's cup multiple times. This is a sign of favor. If the meeting is going poorly, she might let his cup sit empty. This is a chilling signal that the audience is over. The official knows he must take his leave immediately. You are the silent arbiter of the meeting's length. Your teapot a kind of hourglass. Here's a specific, almost paranoid detail you must learn. You must always be the first one to touch the tea set. In the West, when the Empress Dowager is finished, you must immediately clear it away yourself. This is not just about cleanliness. It is about security. Poison was a constant, whispered fear in the palace. An enemy could try to bribe a low-level maid to add a colorless, tasteless powder to the tea by maintaining sole control over the entire process. From the water to the final cup, you are the ultimate guardian against this threat. Your diligence is her life insurance. The extent to which poison was actually used in the palace is a matter of historical debate. While it certainly happened, it may have been less common than the paranoid court culture believed. The fear of poison, however, was a powerful political force in itself, and it governed countless aspects of daily life, especially the preparation of food and drink. It was this fear that gave a humble tea-serving eunuch like you such a profound, if nerve-wracking, responsibility. One afternoon, the Empress Dowager is in a rare, talkative mood. She tells you a story about her own grandmother, who could supposedly identify over 50 different types of tea just by the scent of the dry leaves. As she speaks, she watches you, gauging your reaction. You know this is a test. You simply nod, your face a mask of serene interest, and say, "Her Highness's wisdom is as deep as the sea." You have learned the lesson. You are not there to have a conversation. You are there to be a respectful audience, a blank wall against which she can bounce her thoughts. Your life is measured in cups of tea. Each one is a small, silent performance, a ritual of loyalty and control. In this simple, daily act, you find the strange paradox of your existence. You are a powerless servant, yet you hold your mistress's comfort, her social power, and even her life in your hands. As you become a trusted fixture in the Empress Dowager's chambers, your role evolves. You are still her server, hearth and weaver, her shadow, but you are also becoming something else, something far more important, her memory. You are transforming into a living repository of secrets, a silent archivist of the whispers that echo through the silk-draped corridors of the Forbidden City. Your master, Wei, trained you to remember, and now you understand why. Information is the lifeblood of the palace. It is more valuable than gold, more potent than poison, and more dangerous than any blade. And your proximity to the Empress Dowager places you at the very heart of its flow. Your days are filled with the collection of seemingly trivial data. You learn to memorize the gift list from every visiting official who brought what, and what quality was it. A gift of rare tribute silk from the south is a sign of wealth and influence. A gift of common porcelain is a sign of waning fortunes. The Empress Dowager may not even glance at the gifts, but she will expect you to have a perfect inventory of them in your head. This is the ledger of political capital. You memorize the rotation of the guards, the schedules of the court physicians, the duty rosters of the palace maids. This is the operational map of the palace. Knowing who was where, then when, can be crucial for verifying an alibi or disproving a rumor. You become a walking, talking security camera, recording everything, processing everything, and storing it away in the vast, silent library of your mind. The most important information, however, comes from the whispers. You stand silently by the door during the Empress Dowager's private audiences. You are invisible, a part of the decor. The officials and nobles who visit her often forget you are there, and their conversations, while still guarded, can reveal volumes. You hear of a general's secret gambling debts, a minister's ambitious son who is seeking a promotion, a consort's family who has fallen into disgrace. You absorb it all, your face a placid mask. Later, in the quiet of the evening, the Empress Dowager might ask you, "Little Han, what news is there from the court of the Empress?" This is your cue. You will report, in your usual monotone, what you have observed and what you have heard through your own network of sworn brothers. You do not offer analysis or opinion. You are a pure conduit of information. You might say, "This servant heard that the Empress's brother has purchased a new mansion in the city. The cost was said to be 10,000 taels of silver." You present the fact, and let your mistress draw her own conclusions about the source of such wealth. This is a dangerous game. The information you carry is a heavy burden. If it were known that you were the source of a particular piece of intelligence, the person you exposed could become your mortal enemy. This is why eunuchs developed a reputation for being secretive and conspiratorial. Their survival depended on it. They communicated in code, innuendo, and half-truths, always maintaining plausible deniability. Here's a specific and fascinating detail about this secret world. Sometimes, a message was too sensitive to be spoken at all. It would be written on a tiny slip of rice paper. The recipient would read it, and then, to ensure it could never be found, they would swallow it. This practice of eating the evidence was the ultimate guarantee of secrecy. A secret that has been digested can never be used against you. Historians fiercely debate the true extent of the eunuch spy network. Was it a highly organized, centrally controlled intelligence agency, as some official histories claim, or was it a more informal, decentralized web of personal alliances and rivalries? The Confucian scholar officials, who were the eunuchs' greatest rivals, often portrayed them as a sinister cabal, a state within a state that manipulated the emperor for its own gain. Eunuch memoirs, on the other hand, tend to describe a more chaotic world of individual survival. The truth, as always, is likely somewhere in the middle. This system was a fluid, organic thing, driven by the personal ambitions of thousands of individuals. Your old master, Wei, is your guide in this shadowy world. When you visit him, you share your intelligence. He helps you to interpret it, to see the hidden patterns. He warns you, a secret is a fire. It can warm you, but it can also burn down your house. Never hold on to it for too long, and be very careful who you share it with. You are no longer just a servant. You are a node in the palace's nervous system. You are an ear, a memory, a whisper in a silk sleeve. The power you are beginning to wield is not your own. It is a borrowed power, derived entirely from the secrets you keep, and you are keenly aware that the same whispers that can elevate you can also, with a single, careless word, utterly destroy you. The Forbidden City revolves around one man, the Emperor, the Son of Heaven. He is a divine figure, a living deity whose word is law and whose face you might only glimpse a few times in your life. He is surrounded by his ministers, his generals, his family, and his concubines. But in this vast, crowded court, the emperor is often the loneliest man in the world, and the person who frequently becomes his closest, and sometimes only, friend is a eunuch. As you rise through the ranks, your duties might shift from the Empress Dowager's court to the emperor's personal chambers. This is the absolute pinnacle of a eunuch's career. To become the emperor's personal attendant, his suiban, is to achieve a level of intimacy and influence that no official minister can ever hope for. The relationship between an emperor and his favorite eunuch is one of the most peculiar and fascinating in all of history. It often began in childhood. An emperor was born into a world of immense formality and isolation. His own mother, unless she was the empress, would have limited access to him. His tutors were old, stern Confucian scholars who drilled him relentlessly on the classics. His playmates were carefully chosen and taught to always lose to him. The only person who was with him, day in and day out, from the moment he woke to the moment he slept, was his personal eunuch attendant. This eunuch was his servant, but he was also his playmate, his confidant, and his co-conspirator in the small rebellions of childhood. He was the one who would sneak the young prince extra sweets, who would listen to his fears and frustrations, and who would share in his games. A bond forged in the loneliness of a royal childhood could be incredibly powerful and last a lifetime. The eunuch knew the emperor not as the son of heaven, but as a man, with all his quirks, weaknesses, and secret desires. When the prince ascends the throne, his eunuch friend ascends with him. He becomes the gatekeeper, the one person who can see the emperor without a formal appointment. While ministers have to submit memorials and wait for an audience, the eunuch attendant is there, whispering in the emperor's ear as he gets dressed in the morning, or chatting with him informally as they walk in the garden. He can influence the emperor's mood, shape his perception of events, and subtly promote his friends and undermine his enemies. This is why the scholar officials, the formal bureaucracy of the empire, so deeply hated and feared the high-ranking eunuchs. The officials saw them as an uneducated, illegitimate source of power that bypassed the proper channels of government. The eunuchs, in turn, often saw the officials as arrogant, power-hungry hypocrites who didn't truly understand the emperor's personal needs. This created a permanent state of tension, a cold war between the inner court of the eunuchs and the outer court of the officials. Here is a small, telling detail about this dynamic. An emperor might be bored to tears by a long, tedious lecture from his grand secretary on matters of tax policy. After dismissing the official, he might turn to his eunuch and complain. The eunuch, who has no formal education in tax law, might simply say, "That old man is always so gloomy. Your Majesty, why not relax for a while? The opera troupe has a new performance you might enjoy." In that moment, the eunuch wields more influence over the emperor's schedule, and therefore the affairs of state, than the highest minister in the land. The historical debate over the role of evil eunuchs is central to Chinese historiography. For centuries, Confucian historians blamed corrupt and powerful eunuchs for the fall of dynasties. They were portrayed as greedy, power-mad villains who manipulated weak emperors and brought ruin to the empire. The truth is more complex. While there were certainly many corrupt and destructive eunuchs, they were also a product of the system. An emperor, trapped in a cage of ceremony, naturally turned to the only people he could truly trust. The eunuch's power was a direct reflection of the emperor's isolation and his need for a genuine human connection. You might find yourself in this position. The emperor might start to confide in you, asking for your opinion not on matters of state, but on personal things. Does this new robe look good on him? Is a particular concubine truly happy? Or is she just pretending these are questions he cannot ask his ministers? He asks you because you are pure, because you have no family of your own to promote, and because you have been by his side your whole life. You are his sounding board, his comfort, his friend. It is a position of unimaginable power and terrifying precarity. Your influence is entirely dependent on the personal affection of one man. If his mood changes, or if he dies, your power vanishes in an instant. You are the emperor's lonely friend, his human diary. You share his solitude. You lighten his burden, and you pray that he lives a long time. As you gain favor and influence, whether in the court of the Empress Dowager or the Emperor himself, your life begins to change in tangible ways. You are no longer just a servant, you are a man of means. And in a world where you have been denied the fundamental human experiences of marriage and family, the pursuit of wealth and luxury becomes a powerful, all-consuming substitute. For a palace eunuch, a fortune in flowing robes was a way to fill the void. The sources of a eunuch's wealth were numerous, and often dubious. Your official salary was meager, little more than a stipend for food and basic necessities. The real money came from other channels. The most common source was gifts. Officials, nobles, and anyone else seeking an audience with your imperial master would have to go through you first, and it was understood that a gift was required to smooth the way. This wasn't considered a bribe in the modern sense. It was a customary part of the palace ecosystem. A pouch of silver, a rare piece of jade, or a roll of fine silk, discreetly passed into your hands, would ensure that an official's request reached the top of the pile. Refusing to play this game meant your petition would be lost in the vast bureaucracy forever. You became a toll booth on the road to power. Another source of income was control over procurement. If you were a high-ranking eunuch in, say, the Department of Imperial Utensils, you were responsible for purchasing vast quantities of supplies for the palace, everything from porcelain bowls to bronze incense burners. This gave you immense opportunities for kickbacks. A merchant who wanted his wares to be chosen for the palace would pay you a handsome percentage of the contract's value. This system, known as squeeze, was rampant, and it allowed senior eunuchs to amass colossal fortunes. What did you spend this money on? You couldn't found a dynasty or raise a family to inherit your wealth, so you spent it on yourself, on creating a life of exquisite, personal luxury. Your living quarters would be transformed. You would acquire a private courtyard house within the palace walls, furnished with the finest rosewood furniture, decorated with priceless landscape paintings, and filled with ancient artifacts. Your robes would no longer be coarse cotton, but layer upon layer of the finest embroidered silk, in rich, deep colors that signaled your high rank. You would wear a thumb ring carved from a single piece of flawless white jade and carry a fan made of fragrance and wild. Food became another avenue for displaying status. while the lower-ranking eunuchs ate simple fare from a communal kitchen. You would have your own private chefs. You could indulge in the most exotic and expensive delicacies the empire had to offer: bird's nest soup, shark's fin, and rare fruits transported at great expense from the southern provinces. You would host lavish banquets for your sworn brothers and allies, cementing your relationships over tables groaning with food and fine wine. Here's a specific, peculiar detail of this luxurious lifestyle: the obsession with pets. Many wealthy eunuchs became avid collectors of dogs, cats, or songbirds. They would keep them in ornate, custom-built cages and dote on them like children. The famous Ming Dynasty eunuch, Liu Jian, was said to have had a collection of over 100 prize-winning songbirds, each with its own dedicated servant to care for it. These pets were more than just a hobby. They were a substitute for the family and affection that were denied to them. They were living creatures upon whom they could lavish their care and their wealth without complication or betrayal. The sheer scale of eunuch wealth is a subject of historical record, though the exact figures are debated. When the notoriously corrupt Ming eunuch Zongxian finally fell from power, his personal fortune was confiscated. The inventory of his wealth was staggering, said to be greater than that of the imperial treasury itself. He owned multiple mansions filled with gold, silver, priceless antiques, and a private army of retainers. This is an extreme example, but it illustrates how the system allowed a select few to rise from abject poverty to become some of the wealthiest individuals in the empire. This relentless pursuit of material possessions was, at its core, a deeply human response to a profound loss. You were cut off from the normal flow of human life, from the chain of ancestors and descendants. You could not leave a legacy of blood, so you sought to leave a legacy of things. Your beautiful house, your fine robes, your collection of ancient scrolls. These were the monuments to your existence. They were proof that you, a boy who started with nothing but a desperate bargain, had not only survived but had triumphed in the glittering, treacherous world of the Forbidden City. Your wealth was a shield against the emptiness, a loud declaration of your importance in a world that had tried to render you a nonentity. Your wealth grows. Your private quarters are filled with beautiful objects, and your silk robes are the envy of the junior eunuchs who scurry past you in the corridors. You have power, you have influence, and you have the respect, or at least the fear, of those around you. But in the quiet hours of the night, when the banquets are over and your sworn brothers have departed, a deep, gnawing loneliness remains. You have no one to carry on your name, no one to inherit the fortune you have so carefully amassed. You have no son. This is where one of the most poignant and human customs of eunuch life emerges: the practice of adoption. A successful, high-ranking eunuch would often adopt a boy to be his heir. This was not just a sentimental gesture. It was a deeply practical arrangement that sought to replicate the family structure they had all been forced to forsake. The boy was almost always a relative, typically a nephew or grandnephew from the family you left behind in your home village. This was the ultimate fulfillment of the bargain your parents made so many years ago. Not only had you saved them from poverty with the money you sent home, but you were now going to elevate one of their own to a life of privilege within the palace itself. The process of adoption was a formal one. You would travel back to your village not as the terrified boy who left, but as a great and powerful man, arriving in a fine palanquin with a retinue of servants. You would select a promising young boy from among your brothers or cousins' children. The boy's parents would willingly give him to you, knowing he was being given a chance at a future they could never provide. The boy would be brought to the capital and would take your palace name. He would become, for all intents and purposes, your son. You would raise him in your household, provide him with the best tutors, and dress him in fine clothes. He was not, however, a eunuch. That was a crucial distinction. He was a whole, complete boy. He was your hope for a normal lineage. Your adopted son served several vital purposes. First, he was your companion in old age. He would care for you, manage your household, and provide the kind of filial piety and affection that was the bedrock of Confucian society. He filled the silence in your grand, lonely house. Second, he was your heir. The wealth you had accumulated would pass to him. This ensured that your life's work would not simply be reabsorbed into the imperial treasury upon your death. It would remain within your family, solidifying the new, elevated status you had earned for them. Most importantly, your adopted son was responsible for your spirit after death. It was a son's duty to perform the proper ancestral rites for his father, to burn incense at his grave, to make offerings on festival days, and to ensure his spirit was honored and appeased. Without a son, a spirit would become a hungry ghost, a wretched, forgotten soul with no one to care for it in the afterlife. By adopting a son, you were securing your own spiritual immortality. Here's a small, touching detail about these relationships. Many eunuchs doted on their adopted sons with an intense, fierce affection. They would spoil them lavishly, buying them anything they desired. The memoirs of the last eunuchs are filled with fond recollections of their fathers, describing them as kind, if strict, guardians who gave them a life of unimaginable privilege. This relationship was the emotional anchor of a eunuch's life, the central beam around which their otherwise hollow family structure was built. Historians debate the legal and social status of these adopted sons. While the practice was widespread and socially accepted within the palace, it existed in a legal gray area. Some conservative Confucian officials viewed it as an unnatural parody of a true family and sought to have the inheritance rights of adopted sons curtailed. They argued that a eunuch, being an incomplete person, could not be a true father. This was part of the ongoing power struggle between the eunuchs and the scholar bureaucrats. For the most part, however, the practice was too deeply entrenched to be eradicated. As your adopted son grows up, you begin to see the world through his eyes. You arrange a good marriage for him with the daughter of a respectable family. You watch with a mixture of pride and a deep, ineffable sadness as he has children of his own, your grandchildren. They are a family that is yours and yet not yours. You are the patriarch, the wealthy and powerful grandfather, but you are also an outsider, a silent observer of the normal cycle of life, from which you were irrevocably removed. You have recreated the family you lost, but you can never be a full participant in it. You are its architect, but you must forever live in the rooms reserved for the lonely ghost. Your adopted son is growing into a young man. He speaks with the deep, resonant voice of youth, a sound you can only vaguely remember. When you speak, your own voice is a constant, public reminder of the sacrifice you made. The physical transformation you underwent as a boy was not just a single event. It was the beginning of a lifelong process of change, a state of being that set you apart in ways both visible and invisible. The most obvious change, and the one that became a defining characteristic of a eunuch, was the voice. The removal of the testes before puberty prevents the larynx, the voice box, from growing and thickening in the way it normally would during male adolescence. As a result, your voice never breaks. It remains in the higher register of a child, a clear, high-pitched, and often thin sound that carried none of the timbre or resonance of an adult male voice. This sound became your auditory uniform. In the vast halls of the Forbidden City, you could instantly identify another eunuch just by the sound of his voice calling out from a distant corridor. It was the sound of your caste to the outside world. This high, unnatural voice was often a subject of mockery and caricature. It was seen as effeminate, another marker of your incomplete manhood. Inside the palace, however, it was simply a fact of life, the background music of the imperial court. You learned to use this voice as a tool. A high-ranking eunuch could learn to project his voice with surprising force, a sharp, piercing sound that could cut through the murmur of a crowded hall and make junior servants jump. Conversely, you could soften it to a near whisper, a sibilant, secretive sound perfect for delivering confidential messages. Your voice was a specialized instrument, adapted to the unique acoustical and social environment of the palace. The physical changes extended beyond your voice. You did not develop the same muscle mass as other men. Your limbs remained slighter, your shoulders less broad. You did not grow a beard or much body hair, and your skin often retained a soft, smooth quality. As you aged, you were prone to gaining weight, particularly around the hips and chest, a result of the hormonal changes. This created a distinctive physique that, combined with the voice, made a eunuch instantly recognizable. Here's a peculiar and often overlooked consequence of your physical state, a tendency towards premature aging and osteoporosis. The lack of testosterone meant that your bones were often more brittle than a normal man's. A simple fall that another person might recover from easily could result in a serious fracture for an older eunuch. This fragility was a hidden vulnerability, a secret weakness behind the facade of power. Many elderly eunuchs walked with a stoop or a shuffle, their bodies bent not just by age, but by a lifetime of hormonal imbalance. The psychological impact of these physical realities is a profound and difficult subject. How did it feel to live in a body that was in a state of permanent suspension between child and adult? Between male and female, some eunuchs undoubtedly felt a deep sense of shame and loss. They were often described as being moody, irritable, and prone to fits of rage, what the palace staff called eunuch's temper. This could have been a psychological reaction to their physical condition, a lashing out against a fate they could not change. On the other hand, some historians argue that many eunuchs may have developed a strong sense of corporate identity and even pride. They were a unique third gender, neither man nor woman, with their own culture, their own rules, and their own path to power. They may have come to see their physical difference not as a lack, but as a marker of their special, sacred status. Their purity, their access to the inner court, their unique role in the cosmos, all of it stemmed from their physical alteration. They were different, and that difference was the source of their power. You see this spectrum of reactions among your peers. Some are bitter and cruel, taking out their frustrations on the junior eunuchs under their command. Others are serene and philosophical, accepting their lot with a kind of detached grace. You, yourself, have learned to live with the contradictions. You catch your reflection in a polished bronze mirror, the smooth face, the fine robes, the aging but still unmasculine features. You hear your own high-pitched voice giving a command, and then you hear your son's deep voice answering you respectfully. In that moment, the full, strange weight of your life is apparent. You are a powerful man in a body that is a permanent testament to your powerlessness. A father with a voice that is eternally that of a child. Your adopted son is intelligent and eager to learn. You hire the best tutors for him, men who can teach him the Confucian classics, the intricate arts of poetry and calligraphy, and the complex histories of the dynasties. You watch his education with a mixture of pride and distance. This world of regress. Formal scholarship is one that you, as a eunuch, will archly barred from, and it represents one of the deepest fault lines in the palace, the bitter rivalry between the eunuchs and the scholar officials. According to orthodox Confucian ideology, the empire was to be run by a class of highly educated scholar bureaucrats, men who had earned their positions by passing a series of grueling civil service examinations. These exams tested their mastery of the 4 books and 5 classics, ancient texts that formed the moral and philosophical bedrock of Chinese society. These men saw themselves as the rightful guardians of civilization, the moral compass of the emperor, and the true administrators of the realm. And they saw you, the eunuchs, as everything they were not. They saw you as uneducated, illiterate, and morally corrupt. They believed you gained power not through merit and learning, but through sycophancy, manipulation, and your unnatural proximity to the imperial family. They considered the influence of eunuchs in government to be a cancer, a recurring sickness that had plagued and toppled dynasties for centuries. This animosity was deeply ingrained and mutual. You and your fellow eunuchs, in turn, often viewed the scholar officials as arrogant, impractical, and hypocritical. You saw them as men who were full of high-minded talk about virtue and morality, but who were just as ambitious and greedy as anyone else. You saw them as men who understood the ancient texts, but who did not understand the living, breathing reality of the emperor's needs and modes. You knew that, for all their talk of serving the state, their primary loyalty was often to their own sprawling family clans and political factions. This rivalry played out daily in the court. The officials would submit long, beautifully written memorials to the emperor, quoting the classics to argue against a particular policy. A powerful eunuch, standing by the emperor's side, couldn't do their argument with a single, well-timed, practical objection. Your Majesty, the Grand Secretary's plan is eloquent, but it will cost $1 million of silver we do not have. It was a constant battle between classical idealism and pragmatic, personal influence. But was the stereotype of the illiterate eunuch actually true? Not entirely. While most eunuchs, especially those in lower-ranking, menial positions, were indeed uneducated, a select group at the top were highly literate and cultured. In some dynasties, particularly the Ming, the palace even operated a special school for eunuchs, where they were taught to read, write, and handle official documents. A powerful eunuch who served as the emperor's personal secretary had to be able to read and summarize hundreds of memorials a day. This leads to a fascinating uncontroversial area of history, the role of eunuchs as educators. The idea that eunuchs, the enemies of the scholarly class, could themselves be tutors is a point of contention for many historians. However, there is evidence that eunuchs were often responsible for the early education of young princes. Before the formal Confucian tutors took over, it was the eunuchs who taught a young prince his first characters, who read him his first stories, and who supervised his daily life. They had a profound influence on the formative years of future emperors, a fact that horrified the scholar officials. They believed that a prince raised by eunuchs would be contaminated by their influence, making him a weakened, easily manipulated ruler when he came to the throne. A small, telling detail of this educational role is the red brush. When the emperor approved a memorial, he would signify it with a stroke of red ink. In many cases, especially with emperors who were lazy or disengaged from a document's content, it was the eunuch secretary who would physically guide the emperor's hand to make the mark, or even make the mark himself. The eunuch, in this moment, was literally wielding the emperor's power, a fact that symbolized the scholar official's worst fears. You see this dynamic firsthand. You see the disdain in the eyes of the high-ranking ministers when they are forced to deal with you. You hear their muttered comments about palace vermin. Then you, in turn, feel a quiet contempt for their blindness to the realities of power. They have their books and their ideals. You have the trust of the Son of Heaven. In the silent, ongoing war for the emperor's soul, you are on opposite sides of the battlefield. Your lack of a classical education is your greatest weakness in their eyes, but your intimate, practical knowledge of the human heart of the palace is your greatest strength. The palace is a world of rigid ceremony and constant tension. Every day is a tightrope walk over a pit of political intrigue. To survive, you must find a way to release the pressure. A small, private garden where your soul can breathe, denied the comforts of a normal family life. You and your fellow eunuchs cultivate personal passions with an intensity that is almost obsessive. These hobbies are not just ways to pass the time, they are acts of self-preservation. For many eunuchs, this solace is found in the arts. You might discover a hidden talent for calligraphy, the art of the brush. In your small, quiet room, late at night, you practice for hours, grinding your own ink on a stone slab. The faint, earthy scent filling the air. You learn to control the flow of the ink, the pressure of the brush, creating characters that are both elegant and powerful. You copy out famous poems or Buddhist sutras. The intense focus required for calligraphy is a form of meditation, a way to quiet the noisy, anxious parts of your mind. It is a space where you can create beauty and order in a life that is oft unchaotic and ugly. Others find their escape in music. You might learn to play the gukyu-in, a 7 strings either known for its subtle, melancholic tones. The music is quiet and deeply personal, not meant for performance but for self-cultivation. You pluck the silk strings, the soft notes echoing in your chambers, playing ancient tunes that speak of mountains, rivers, and the quiet sorrows of the human heart. The music becomes a voice for the emotions you are forbidden to express. Perhaps your greatest passion is for the Beijing Opera. The palace has its own troupe of actors and musicians, and a powerful eunuch could become a major patron. You might attend performances regularly, becoming a renowned connoisseur. You know the stories by heart, the tragedies of wronged scholars and the comedies of mistaken identity. You know every actor, their strengths and weaknesses. You might even invite the troupe to your private quarters for a special performance for you and your sworn brothers. The drama, the color, the music, the larger-than-life emotions of the stage, it is a thrilling escape from the repressed, whispered world of the court. And then there is the garden. Many eunuchs, especially the wealthy and retired, become obsessive gardeners outside the forbidden city. In the western suburbs of Beijing were sprawling temple complexes and private villas, many of them owned by powerful eunuchs. Here, they would create magnificent gardens, miniature landscapes designed for contemplation and escape. You might spend your fortune creating a perfect, idealized world. You would direct the placement of every rock, the course of every small stream, the planting of every willow, tree, and peony bush. Here's a small, beautiful detail about these gardens: the moon gate. This is a circular opening in a garden wall, a common feature in Chinese landscape design. It serves as a frame, turning the view on the other side into a living painting. For a eunuch, this moon gate could be a powerful symbol. It is a portal, a passage from the rigid, straight lines of the palace into a world of natural, curving, organic beauty. Stepping through it is like stepping into another reality, a world of your own creation. The depth of eunuch involvement in the arts and horticulture is well documented, but historians debate its interpretation. Was it simply a way for wealthy individuals to spend their leisure time, as any aristocrat might, or was there something deeper at play? Some scholars argue that these passions were a form of compensation, unable to create life through children. Eunuchs poured their creative energies into art, music, and the cultivation of plants. Their gardens were their children, their paintings their legacy. It was a way of making a mark on the world, of leaving behind something beautiful that would outlive them. You find your own solace. Perhaps it is in the meticulous care of a collection of miniature jade carvings. Perhaps it is in the breeding of goldfish, watching their shimmering colors drift through the water in a large porcelain bowl. Or perhaps it is in the simple act of growing a single, perfect chrysanthemum in a pot on your windowsill. This small, private world is your sanctuary. It is a place where you are the master, where the rules are your own, and where you can cultivate a small patch of beauty and peace in the shadow of the dragon throne. It is the thing that keeps you sane. The rivalry between your kind, the eunuchs, and the scholar officials, is the central political axis of the Forbidden City. It is silent, grinding war fought in the corridors of power, in the emperor's mind, and on the pages of history. This isn't just a competition for influence, it's a clash of two fundamentally different worldviews, two different sources of legitimacy. The scholar officials, the mandarins, draw their right to govern from Confucius. Their authority comes from thousands of years of classical tradition and their own hard-won erudition. They believe in a government of laws, rituals, and moral principles, administered by a virtuous, uneducated elite. They see themselves as the bedrock of the state, the guardians of civilization. In their ideal world, the emperor is a wise, remote figurehead who follows their sage advice, and the machinery of government runs smoothly according to ancient precedent. You, the eunuchs, represent a different kind of power. Your authority comes not from books, but from proximity. It is personal, intimate, and fluid. You are the emperor's eyes and ears, the managers of his daily life, the gatekeepers to his presence. The mandarins believe that this is a corruption of the proper order. They write endlessly in their official histories and private letters about the eunuch scourge, portraying you as a parasitic class that thrives on the weakness of emperors and the decay of institutions. This deep-seated animosity manifests in countless ways. When a group of officials wants to present a petition to the emperor, they must first submit it to the palace secretariat, which is often run by a high-ranking eunuch. You and your colleagues can, if you wish, simply lose this petition. It will never reach the emperor's desk. The officials know this, and it forces them into the humiliating position of having to bribe or curry favor with the very men they despise. Conversely, the officials have their own weapons. Their most powerful is the brush. They are the ones who write the official histories. And history, as they say, is written by the victors. In the official records of the dynasty, powerful eunuchs are almost invariably portrayed as one-dimensional villains. Their successes are ignored, their mistakes are magnified, and their motives are always presented as selfish and corrupt. They become the scapegoats for every famine, lost battle, or peasant rebellion. The mandarins use their control over the historical narrative to wage a propaganda war against you that will last for centuries. Here's a specific example of this clash. In the mid-Ming dynasty, the eunuchs ran a powerful and feared secret police organization known as the Eastern Depot. This organization was tasked with rooting out treason and corruption, and it answered directly to the emperor, completely bypassing the official Ministry of Justice. The eunuch agents of the Eastern Depot could arrest, interrogate, and torture officials without trial. The mandarins saw this as the ultimate symbol of eunuch tyranny, a lawless star chamber that undermined the entire legal system. The eunuchs, on the other hand, would have argued that they were simply carrying out the emperor's will, rooting out the corruption that was rampant among the official class. The eunuchs versus officials narrative is a staple of Chinese history, but some modern historians argue that it is an oversimplification. They suggest that the reality was more complex. There were often alliances of convenience between certain eunuch factions and certain groups of officials. An ambitious minister might secretly align himself with a powerful eunuch to undermine a rival. The line between the two groups was not always as clear-cut as the official histories would have us believe. It was a shifting landscape of factions, where personal loyalty and self-interest often trumped ideological purity. You feel this rivalry in your bones. You feel the contempt of the officials when you pass them in the hall. You see the caricatures of eunuchs in the popular novels written by disgruntled scholars. You are keenly aware that no matter how much power or wealth you accumulate, you will be remembered by history, if you are remembered at all, as a villain. But you also know the officials' weakness. You know their pomposity, their factional infighting, their detachment from the human realities of the emperor. One evening, you watch as a group of high-ranking mandarins, their faces grim, lecture the young emperor on the importance of fiscal austerity. They speak for an hour, their voices droning on. The emperor's eyes are glazed over with boredom. Later that night, the emperor turns to you and says, "They talk so much, but they don't understand anything." In that quiet, unguarded moment, you know who has really won the day's battle. The mandarins may win the war of history, but you are winning the war for the emperor's heart. While the great war between eunuchs and officials rages in the world of men, you spend most of your waking hours in the world of women. The inner court, the back palace, is a gilded cage, home to the emperor's legion of wives, consorts, and concubines. It is a world of breathtaking beauty, profound loneliness, and fierce, silent competition. And you, the eunuch, are its sole male inhabitant, its guardian, its servant, and its silent witness. Each of these women, from the empress down to the lowest-ranking concubine, is fighting her own desperate battle for a single prize, the emperor's attention. A single night with the emperor could mean the difference between a life of obscurity and a life of favor. If that night results in the birth of a son, her status, and that of her entire family, could be elevated for generations. The stakes are impossibly high. Your role in this drama is a delicate one. You are the women's connection to the outside world, and to the emperor. They cannot leave the inner court. They rely on you for everything, for news, for messages, for the delivery of gifts, and for the thousand small comforts that make their lives bearable. You become their confidant. Hail only young concubine, hailing from a provincial family and ignored by the emperor for months, might strike up a conversation with you as you tend to the flowers in her courtyard. She might ask you about your home village, a rare moment of someone showing interest in your past. She is starved for genuine human interaction. And you, as a safe and non-threatening male, become an easy target for her loneliness. She might start to confide in you, telling you of her hopes, her fears, and her bitter disappointment. You must listen patiently. You face a mask of empathy, but you must be careful. You cannot offer advice. You cannot take sides in the endless rivalries between the women. To show favor to one concubine is to make an enemy of another. You must be a perfect sounding board, a sympathetic ear that absorbs everything and reveals nothing. You learn to say, "Your servant understands your highness's sorrow," a phrase that offers comfort without commitment. Here's a specific, poignant duty you might have. It is you who manages the green-headed slips. These are small wooden tablets, each bearing the name of a concubine eligible for the emperor's favor. Each evening, a tray of these slips would be presented to the emperor. If he was so inclined, he would flip over one of the tablets. The eunuch on duty would then be responsible for fetching the chosen woman. This involved a complex ritual where the woman was bathed, wrapped in a feather quilt, and carried on the back of a eunuch to the emperor's bedchamber. You are, in the most literal sense, the deliverer of the emperor's pleasure. You control the list, you present the tray, and you facilitate the encounter. This gives you a subtle but significant power, as a concubine would do anything to ensure her name was not accidentally left off the tray. The true nature of the relationships between eunuchs and the women of the harem is a source of endless fascination and speculation. The official line was one of strict propriety, but in the close, claustrophobic quarters of the inner court, it's inevitable that more complex bonds formed. Deep friendships, based on shared loneliness and mutual trust, certainly existed. A powerful consort might come to rely on her chief eunuch as her most trusted advisor and political ally. But what about romance? Could love blossom between a beautiful, lonely concubine in the hands of a young eunuch who served her every day? This is the stuff of romantic novels and operas. While it would have been an incredibly dangerous and forbidden love, it's not impossible to imagine. A stolen glance, a brushed hand, a whispered word, these small moments could build into a powerful, secret emotional bond. It would be a love with no physical consummation, a tragic, platonic romance born of shared captivity in a gilded cage. There is no reliable historical evidence for such affairs, as they would have been a death sentence for both parties if discovered, but their absence in the record doesn't mean they never happened. You learn to navigate this world of female power with extreme caution. You are indispensable to these women, but you are also disposable. You are their friend, but you are always, first and foremost, their servant. You are the keeper of their most intimate secrets, their illicitly written poems, their secret sorrows, their desperate ambitions. You are the quiet, de-sex man who moves through their world of perfume, silk, and tears, a constant, silent reminder of the one man they all desire, and the one man you can never be. The bonds you form in the palace are strange and multifaceted. You have your adopted son, a link to the future and the world of normal family life. You have your sworn brothers, your allies in the vicious political landscape of the court. And then there is another, even more peculiar relationship that a high-ranking eunuch like yourself might form a marriage. This was a practice known as do as high, which translates to paired eating or paired couple. It was a formal, long-term, and socially recognized partnership between a high-ranking eunuch and a palace maid. To the outside world, and even within the palace, they would be referred to as husband and wife. This was, of course, not a marriage in the conventional sense. It was a non-physical union, a domestic partnership born of convenience, companionship, and the deep-seated human need for a home. In the vast, impersonal world of the Forbidden City, a duas high partnership was a way for a eunuch and a maid to create a small, private island of normalcy. The palace was staffed by thousands of young women, palace maids, who were often recruited from good families at a young age. They served the imperial ladies, doing everything from embroidery to serving food. Like the eunuchs, their lives were circumscribed and lonely. They were generally not allowed to marry while in service, and by the time they were released from the palace in their mid to late 20s, their prospects for a good marriage on the outside were often slim. A duas high arrangement offered a solution for both parties. For the palace maid, a partnership with a powerful eunuch provided protection, security, and a much higher standard of living. Instead of living in a crowded communal dormitory, she would move into her eunuch husband's private quarters. She would be the mistress of his household, managing his servants and his finances. She would no longer be a lowly maid, but the respected wife of a man of influence. For you, the eunuch, the benefits were just as significant. Your wife would run your home, creating a comfortable and orderly domestic life for you. She would be a companion, someone to talk to share meals with, and to ease the profound loneliness of your existence. In a world where you were constantly on guard, she could be a trusted confidant. This partnership mimicked the structure of a real marriage, providing the emotional and domestic support that came with it. Here's a small, intimate detail about these arrangements. The eunuch and his wife would often develop deep bonds of affection and loyalty. They would refer to each other with pet names, celebrate festival days together, and care for each other in sickness. When the eunuch died, it was his duas high partner who would often act as the chief mourner, the grieving widow, overseeing his funeral arrangements alongside his adopted son. The prevalence and social acceptance of duas high varied from dynasty to dynasty and from emperor to emperor. Some rulers turned a blind eye to the practice, seeing it as a harmless way to maintain morale among their palace staff. Others, particularly strict Confucian emperors, saw it as a decadent and immoral parody of the sacred institution of marriage and sought to ban it. There were periodic crackdowns, where eunuchs and maids involved in these relationships were severely punished, but the practice was so deeply ingrained in palace culture that it always re-emerged. The relationship between your adopted son and your duas high wife could sometimes be a source of tension. Your adopted son was your legal heir, the one who would inherit your wealth and carry on your name. Your wife was the mistress of your current household. There could be jealousies and rivalries between them over your affection and your resources. A wise eunuch had to carefully manage this delicate family dynamic, balancing the needs of his surrogate son with the needs of his surrogate wife. You sit in your comfortable chambers. Your wife is quietly mending one of your silk robes, her needle flashing in the lamplight. Your adopted son is in the next room, practicing his calligraphy. The scene is one of perfect domestic tranquility. It is a beautiful, carefully constructed delusion of a normal family. You have a wife you cannot touch and a son who is not your own. It is a family born not of blood or passion, but of shared loneliness and a mutual need for a safe harbor in the treacherous sea of the Forbidden City. It is a fragile happiness, but it is the only happiness available to you, and you cherish it with a fierce, quiet desperation. Your life has found a fragile stability. You have your alliances, your wealth, your family. You have mastered the intricate dance of palace survival. But this stability rests on one single, mortal foundation: the life of the current emperor. And one day, the sound you have been dreading your entire career echoes through the forbidden city. The long, mournful toll of the great bell. The Son of Heaven is dead. The moment the bell tolls, a wave of profound uncertainty and terror washes over the entire eunuch community. Everything is about to change. The death of an emperor is not just a moment of national mourning. It is a political earthquake that completely reshapes the landscape of power. Your career, your influence, and perhaps your very life are now in jeopardy. The first few hours are a chaotic scramble. The palace goes into lockdown. The gates are sealed. No one is allowed in or out. This is to prevent any potential coup or attempt to install rival heir. The most powerful eunuchs, like the director of ceremonial, move quickly to secure the palace and, most importantly, to control the succession. The official heir, the crown prince, must be immediately located and protected. His ascension to the throne must be swift and seamless to prevent any challenges. For a eunuch like you, who was close to the deceased emperor, this is a time of extreme danger. You were a man of the old regime. The new emperor, who is now surrounded by his own set of trusted advisors and favorite eunuchs from his days as a prince, may see you as a threat. You know too much. You were privy to the old emperor's secrets, his weaknesses, his private schemes. You are a living reminder of a past that the new emperor may want to erase. The best you can hope for is a quiet, forced retirement. You might be stripped of your titles and duties and allowed to live out your days in your private quarters, effectively under house arrest. Your influence would be gone overnight. The junior eunuchs who once bowed so deeply to you will now avert their eyes. The officials who once sought your favor will now ignore you. You become a ghost, a relic of a bygone era. But a worse fate is entirely possible. The new emperor, or the rival eunuch faction that now has his ear, may decide that you are too dangerous to be left alive. A purge of the old guard is a common feature of a new reign. You might be accused of some trumped-up charge, corruption, or treason, or having improperly influenced the late emperor. There will be no trial. You will simply disappear. A quiet cup of poisoned tea, a suicide in your chambers, or a discreet execution in a remote corner of the palace. Your name will be struck from the records, and it will be as if you never existed. Here is a specific, chilling detail of this transition. The new emperor's first acts often included a symbolic cleansing of his father's personal effects. The old emperor's favorite robes, the teacups he used, the books he read, all of it might be ceremonial burned. This was not just about making space, it was a ritual to obliterate the old emperor's personal energy, his key, and to establish the new emperor's own authority. For you, who were so closely associated with those personal effects, this ceremonial fire feels like your own funeral pyre. The level of danger a eunuch faced during a succession is a topic of historical discussion. While dramatic purges certainly happened, especially after the death of a weak emperor who had been dominated by a powerful eunuch, it was not always the case. Some eunuchs were masters of political survival. They were skilled chameleons, able to seamlessly shift their loyalties and make themselves useful to the new master. They might provide the new emperor with valuable intelligence about their old rivals, thereby securing a place, albeit the diminished one, in the new order. You are now in a desperate race against time. You activate your network of sworn brothers. You try to gauge the new emperor's personality. Who are his trusted men? What are their weaknesses? You might try to send a lavish, secret gift to the new favorite eunuch, a gesture of submission and a plea for your life. You spend sleepless nights burning incriminating documents, hiding your wealth, and preparing for the worst. Every knock on your door makes your heart leap into your throat. Is it a messenger summoning you to a new post, or a team of palace guards coming to escort you on your final journey? The entire world you have built your power, your connections, your carefully constructed life is built on sand, and the tide has just gone out. You are adrift, powerless, waiting to see if the new wave will carry you to shore or dash you against the rocks. Let's say you survive the transition. Through a combination of luck, shrewd political maneuvering, and the protection of your allies, you are not purged. You are simply put out to pasture. The new emperor has no use for you, but he has no reason to kill you either. You are allowed to retire to your comfortable quarters, a forgotten man in a city that has already moved on. Now you face a new and more insidious enemy, one that no amount of political skill can defeat your own body. Old age comes for everyone, but for a eunuch, it comes with a unique set of physical and psychological challenges. Your body, which has been your primary tool for service your entire life, begins to fail you. The brittleness of your bones, a lifelong consequence of your hormonal state, becomes more pronounced. Aches and pains are your constant companions. Your stoop deepens. You walk with a cane. Your once silent steps now slow. Careful shuffle on the cold flagstones. The world of the palace, once your playground of intrigue, shrinks to the confines of your own small courtyard. Your eyesight, once sharp enough to read a courtier's mood from across the hall, begins to dim. The intricate characters in your beloved books of poetry blur together. Your hearing, which once picked up the faintest whisper of conspiracy, now strains to catch the conversations of your servants. You begin to feel disconnected, a spectator watching the world through a thick, cloudy pane of glass. One of the greatest fears of an aging eunuch was incontinence. The physical trauma of your cleansing as a boy often led to a weakening of the urinary tract over a lifetime. In old age, this could become a serious and deeply humiliating problem. You, who once wore robes of the finest perfumed silk, now live in constant fear of the smell of your own body. A final, grim indignity. Sickness is a constant terror. The palace has its own team of physicians, but their primary concern is the health of the imperial family. An old, retired eunuch is at the bottom of their priority list. You have to rely on your own wealth to hire private doctors and purchase expensive medicines like ginseng and rare fungi. Your adopted son and your Duazhai wife become your primary caregivers, tending to you with a mixture of filial duty and genuine affection. Their presence is your only comfort in the long, painful nights. Here's a small, sad detail about this period of decline. Many elderly eunuchs became deeply, almost obsessively, religious. They would spend their days chanting Buddhist sutras or reciting Taoist prayers. Their rooms would fill with the smoke of incense burned before small, personal shrines. This wasn't always about piety, it was about fear. They were facing their own mortality, and they were desperate for any assurance of a peaceful afterlife, a better rebirth, a final release from the sorrows of this world. The social welfare system, or lack thereof, for retired eunuchs is a somber topic. There is no formal pension plan. Your survival in old age depended entirely on the wealth you had managed to accumulate and the loyalty of the family you had created. If you had been a low-ranking eunuch with no power and no savings, your fate was bleak. You might be cast out of the forbidden city to beg on the streets, or you might end up in a special temple for destitute eunuchs, relying on charity for your daily bowl of rice. You watch as your body betrays you, piece by piece. The hands that once served tea to an empress now tremble too much to hold a cup. The feet that once glided silently through the emperor's chambers can now barely carry you to your garden. You are trapped in the decaying prison of your own flesh. You spend more and more time thinking about your bow, the small porcelain jar you have guarded your entire life. It is your most precious possession, the key to your final journey. You have given instructions to your adopted son, over and over again, about its importance. It must be placed in your coffin. You must be made whole again. This single, driving hope becomes the focal point of your remaining days, the last flickering candle in the twilight of your long, strange life. Your health is failing. The world has shrunk to the size of your bed. The magnificent, sprawling forbidden city, the only home you have ever known, is now just a collection of muffled sounds that drift through your window. You know the end is near. It is time to leave the palace. It was an unwritten rule that no one, not even the emperor, was supposed to die within the sacred walls of the Forbidden City. Death was seen as an unclean, polluting event that would disturb the delicate cosmic balance of the imperial center. When a member of the imperial family fell gravely ill, they were moved to a special pavilion just outside the main palace complex. For an old eunuch like you, the destination was different. Your final journey would take you to a temple. Outside the city walls, often in the scenic western hills, were numerous Buddhist and Taoist temples that had been built and endowed by generations of wealthy eunuchs. These temples served many purposes. They were centers of religious life, places for quiet contemplation, and investment properties. But their most important function was to serve as retirement homes and hospices for the eunuch community. When it becomes clear that you are not going to recover, your adopted son arranges for you to be carried in a covered palanquin out of the Forbidden City for the last time. You pass through the service gate where you first entered as a terrified, remade boy. The sounds and smells of the real world, which you have not experienced for decades, are a shock to your system. You arrive at a place like the Temple of Enduring Peace, a beautiful, quiet compound nestled in a grove of ancient cypress trees. The air is clean and smells of pine needles and incense. This temple was funded by your old master, Wei, and other powerful eunuchs of his generation. It is a sanctuary, a final refuge for your kind. Here, you are cared for by monk attendants, many of whom are themselves former low-ranking eunuchs who took up the monastic life in their later years. They understand your needs, your fears, and your particular physical ailments. They speak to you in the familiar, hushed tones of the palace. The community is made up of men like you old, frail, retired eunuchs, spending their last days in prayer and quiet contemplation. In the temple courtyard, you see them, old men with stooped backs and placid, wrinkled faces, sitting in the sun, telling stories of emperors long dead and intrigues long forgotten. They are the living archives of the dynasty, their minds filled with secrets that will die with them. They compare ailments, share remedies, and argue about the finer points of Buddhist philosophy. It is a strange sort of retirement community, a fraternity of ghosts waiting for the end. A specific, poignant feature of these temples was the Hall of Ancestors, but since eunuchs had no real ancestors, this hall was filled with memorial tablets dedicated to the temple's great eunuch patrons. Your old master Wei's tablet is there, a simple piece of carved wood bearing his palace name. It is here that your adopted son will place your tablet after you are gone. This is the only lineage you have, a lineage of service, a brotherhood of shared sacrifice. The economic and social function of these eunuch temples is a fascinating corner of history. They were more than just charities. They were powerful institutions. They owned vast tracts of land, ran businesses, and operated as moneylenders. The wealth that powerful eunuchs accumulated was often funneled into these temples, creating a permanent endowment that would ensure the care of their less fortunate brothers for generations to come. The degree to which these temples were purely religious versus being sophisticated financial operations is debated by scholars. They were likely both, a blend of spiritual solace and pragmatic social welfare. You spend your last days in a clean, simple room, looking out at a peaceful rock garden. The frantic ambition and fear that drove your life have finally faded away. There are no more games to play, no more secrets to keep. There is only the slow, rhythmic chanting of the monks and the gentle rhythm of your own failing breath. Your adopted son sits by your side, holding your hand. You have given him all the necessary instructions. You have told him where to find the small, sealed jar that you have kept safe for a lifetime. Your final journey is about to begin, and there is only one piece of unfinished business left. The world is fading to a soft, gray mist. Your breath is shallow. The only thing that holds your focus now, the last anchor of your consciousness, is a single, overwhelming thought about your treasure, the small porcelain jar containing the proof of your sacrifice, the physical remnant of the boy you once were. This is more than just a sentimental attachment to a lost part of yourself. For you and every other eunuch, the quest to be reunited with your Bao at death is a matter of supreme spiritual importance. It is the final, crucial step in a life lived out of balance, a desperate attempt to restore cosmic order at the very end. The belief was rooted in a deep cultural understanding of the body and the soul. A person was supposed to enter the afterlife in the same state they entered the world hall. To be buried incomplete was to risk a terrible fate. Your spirit would be a mutilated, wandering ghost, rejected by your ancestors and unable to find peace. Worse, it was believed you might be reincarnated as a mule or a donkey, a sterile beast of burden, a punishment for your incomplete state. The only way to avoid this dreadful destiny was to be physically restored in your coffin. This belief created a lifelong source of anxiety. You guarded your Bao with a fierce jealousy. It was kept in a secure place in your quarters, often in a locked chest or a secret compartment. To lose it would be a catastrophe beyond measure. There are stories of eunuchs whose Bao was lost or stolen, and they would spend their entire fortunes trying to recover it, hiring investigators and consulting fortune tellers. It also created a grim and bizarre marketplace. The family of the knife, or who performed your initial operation, often kept the Bao for you, for a fee. When you were close to death, your adopted son or a trusted friend would have to go to them and buy it back. The price could be exorbitant. The Knife RS family knew how desperate you were, and they would extract every last coin they could. For a poor eunuch who had not managed to save much, this final transaction could be a source of immense stress for his family. Here's a particularly strange detail of this practice. Sometimes, a eunuch would lose his original Bao. Perhaps it was destroyed in a fire, or lost during a chaotic political transition. In such cases, he could purchase a replacement on the black market. There weren't scrupulous dealers who would sell salvaged or fake Bao to desperate old eunuchs. Whether this substitute would actually work in the eyes of the gods of the underworld was a matter of grim theological debate. But for a dying man, the hope it offered was better than nothing. The spiritual and psychological roots of this belief are complex. On one level, it's a straightforward desire for physical wholeness. But some historians argue it also reflects the eunuch's ambiguous social position as men who were not men. They lived in a state of permanent liminality. The recombination with the Bao was a symbolic act of reclaiming a fixed identity, of finally becoming male again in death, allowing them to properly join the ranks of their male ancestors. It was a posthumous resolution to a lifetime of ambiguity. As you lie on your deathbed in the quiet temple, this is your final wish. You have lived a life of immense contradiction, a life of servitude and power, of loneliness and camaraderie, of wealth and emptiness. You were a man who could advise an emperor, but could not father a son. You lived in the most magnificent palace on earth, but you were never truly at home. Your entire existence has been a balancing act on a knife's edge. Your adopted son leans in close, and you whisper the location of the jar one last time. He nods, his eyes full of tears. He understands. He will not fail you. He will ensure that when your body is placed in its coffin, the small porcelain jar will be there, resting on your chest. He will ensure that you are made whole. It is your last and only hope, the hope that in the next life, the great cosmic injustice of your existence will be rectified. The hope that you will be reborn not as a servant, not as a ghost, but as a simple, complete man in a dusty village, under a warm sun, with the whole world ahead of him. Your last breath escapes, and your quest for the treasure is finally over. The story of a eunuch, you might think, ends with that quiet death in a peaceful temple, with the final, desperate hope of being made whole. But the story of the eunuchs, as a class, as an institution that had existed for 2,000 years, did not end so quietly. It ended in a sudden, bewildering crash. Let's step forward in time. You are not the eunuch we have been following. He is long gone, his memorial tablet gathering dust in the temple hall. You are one of his successors. You are an old man now, serving in the twilight of the Qing dynasty. In the early years of the 20th century, you have seen emperors come and go. But the threat you now face is not a new emperor. It is a new world. For years, the whispers have been different. They are not the familiar whispers of court intrigue, but strange, foreign words that slipped through the palace walls like a chill wind. Rebellion, republic, revolution. You hear tales of foreign armies with unimaginable weapons, of students with new ideas who say the Son of Heaven is just an ordinary man. You and the other old eunuchs dismiss it as nonsense. The dynasty is eternal. The palace is the center of the universe. It has always been so. Then, the impossible happens. In 1912, the great Qing dynasty, the empire of the Manchus, crumbles. The last emperor, the small boy named Pui, formally abdicates, but he does not leave. A strange deal is struck. The emperor is allowed to continue living within the walls of the Forbidden City, retaining his title, his servants, and his imperial ceremonies. The Forbidden City becomes a phantom kingdom, an island of the past marooned in the middle of a bustling, modernizing republic. The world outside is changing at a dizzying speed. You hear the rumble of motorcars and the clanging of trams, but inside your vermilion walls, you continue the ancient routines. You still serve the emperor his tea in the prescribed manner. You still perform the kowtow. You are the staff of a museum where the chief exhibit is still alive. The Son of Heaven is now just a lonely boy in a very large, very old house, and you are his keepers. This fragile illusion shatters one cold morning in 1924. There is a commotion at the gates. It is not a rival faction or a peasant mob. It is an army, the army of the new Chinese Republic. The soldiers are dressed in drab, modern uniforms, and they carry rifles. They are led by a general who does not bow. He has a simple, brutal order. Everyone must leave. The Forbidden City is being nationalized. The emperor has 3 hours to pack. Panic erupts. The world has ended. For centuries, your entire identity, your reason for being, has been tied to this place in the service of the emperor. To be cast out is not just to lose your home and your job, is to have your entire existence rendered meaningless. You scurry through the halls, trying to hide a few small valuables, grabbing your precious bowl. The younger concubines are weeping. The old eunuchs like you are in a state of stunned, silent shock. The soldiers herd you out of the gates like livestock. You are cast into the streets of a Beijing you do not recognize. You are a living anachronism. People stare at you. Your shuffling gait, your high-pitched voice, your silk robes, they are the markers of a hated, decadent past. Children point and laugh. You have gone from being a respected, the feared figure of the inner court to a public spectacle, the walking, breathing relic. The fate of the hundreds of eunuchs cast out of the palace is a saddened, scattered postscript to imperial history. The new government provides a tiny, often unpaid, pension. Some of the younger, more adaptable ones find menial work. Some who had amassed great wealth are able to live in comfort. But for most, like you, there is nowhere to go. You have no skills that are of any use in this new world. You cannot farm. You cannot work in a factory. Your only skill is the silent, ritualized service of a god who has been dethroned. Historians debate the eunuchs' own feelings about this cataclysm. The memoirs of the literate, high-ranking ones, are filled with a sense of tragedy and a deep nostalgia for the lost imperial glory. For them, it was the end of a beautiful, orderly world. But what of the lowest-ranking eunuchs? The ones who spent their lives cleaning latrines and suffering beatings? It's possible that for some, the terror of expulsion was mixed with a secret, exhilarating thrill of freedom. They were no longer slaves to the bell. no longer subject to the whims of cruel masters. The choice was no longer theirs, but they were, for the first time in their lives, free. You and a group of your old comrades make your way to the eunuch temples in the western hills, the only sanctuary left to you. You huddle together, sharing stories of the old days, trying to make sense of a world that has no place for you. You are the last of your kind. When you die, no new boys will come to replace you. The knife RS have laid down their blades forever. You are the final chapter of a book that has been slammed shut. You are sitting in the courtyard of the Temple of Enduring Peace. The sun is warm on your old, wrinkled face. The last emperor is a private. It is unliving under foreign protection in the city of Tianjin. The Forbidden City is now a public museum, its sacred halls echoing with the footsteps of curious tourists. You are one of the last living men to have served the Son of Heaven. Your long, strange journey is almost at its end, and it is a time for reflection. What was the meaning of a life like yours? It was a life built on a foundation of profound contradictions. You sacrificed your manhood to gain access to a world of ultimate masculinity, the court of the Dragon Emperor. You were considered impure by society, yet you were the only ones deemed pure enough to guard the women of the inner court. You were a servant, a slave in all but name, yet some of your kind rose to command armies, run the secret police, and control the fate of the empire. You were the ultimate insider, privy to the dynasty's most intimate secrets, yet you were always, and forever, an outsider. You think back to the beginning, to the terrified boy from the dusty village, the bargain he made, or that was made for him. Was it worth it? He escaped a life of grinding poverty and near certain starvation. He traded the endless toil of the fields for the silken robes and intrigue of the palace. He walked with emperors and empresses. He tasted power and luxury that his family could never have imagined. But the cost was immense. You were denied the simple, fundamental joys that give meaning to most human lives. You never knew the love of a wife in the full sense, never held your own biological child in your arms. You lived a life of constant fear, of professional paranoia, where a single misstep could lead to ruin or death. You were a person without a true name, without a true family, a ghost gliding through the corridors of other people's lives. Your entire existence was a performance of deference, a constant suppression of your own self. This duality is the essence of your story. For every eunuch who rose to become a wealthy and powerful figure like your old master Wei, there were 1,000 others who lived and died in obscurity, performing menial, back-breaking labor their entire lives. For every story of a trusted imperial confidant, there is a story of a boy who died of infection after the cleansing, his gamble lost before it even began. The final judgment of history on the role of the eunuchs remains a deeply contested issue. Were they, as the Confucian historians wrote, a corrupting force, a recurring cancer that brought down dynasty after dynasty, or were they unnecessary, if flawed, part of the imperial system, a counterbalance to the power of the scholar officials and the imperial clan? Were they villains, or were they victims? The modern historical consensus tends to be more nuanced. It sees eunuchs not as a monolithic block, but as a diverse group of individuals, acting out of a complex mix of ambition, self-preservation, and genuine loyalty. They were a product of a unique and often brutal political system, and they played the hand they were dealt with skill, ruthlessness, and a profound, quiet sorrow. A young monk brings you a cup of tea. You take it in your trembling hands. You notice it's a fine dragon well, the kind the Empress Dowager used to favor on warm spring afternoons. The taste, the scent, it all comes rushing back, a lifetime of memories, of silent observations, of secrets kept in stories overheard. You are a footnote in the grand, sweeping epic of a mighty empire, but your story is also a testament to the strange and resilient nature of the human spirit. It is a story of how people, when placed in the most unnatural of circumstances, will find ways to create their own forms of love, family, and minu. You found it in the loyalty of a sworn brother, the affection of an adopted son, the companionship of a wife, the beauty of a garden, the quiet satisfaction of a job done with perfect, invisible skill. The sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows across the temple courtyard. Your journey, and ours, is over. The last eunuch will die in the 1990 seconds. The final punctuation mark on a 2,000-year-old story. The world they inhabited is gone, sealed behind the vermilion gates of a palace that is now only a memory. And now, the last rays of the setting sun have faded from the temple walls. The courtyard is bathed in the soft, blue light of twilight. The low chanting of the monks from the prayer hall becomes a gentle, humming drone, a sound that seems to vibrate in the very air around you, loosening the knots of the day. The story is over. The faces and figures, the young boy at the gate, the old master Wei, the lonely concubines, the last emperor, they recede, dissolving like smoke from an incense burner. They are returning to the silent pages of history, their anxieties and ambitions finally laid to rest. The weight of their world lifts from your shoulders. You feel a sense of peace settling over you, as soft and as gentle as a fall of snow on a quiet winter night. The chair you are in, the bed you are lying on, seems to hold you more closely, more securely. It is a safe harbor. The small sounds of your own room, the whir of a fan, the distant rumble of a passing car, the creak of the house settling, they are no longer noises, but the quiet, rhythmic pulse of your own tranquil world. You are drifting now, no longer through the corridors of the forbidden city, but on the slow, deep currents of approaching sleep. There is nothing more to learn, nothing more to see. There is only the sensation of letting go, a gentle, easy surrender to the quiet that awaits. Your mind grows still, your body grows heavy. You are sinking peacefully, effortlessly, into the deep, restorative, and welcoming silence of the night. You are calm, you are comfortable, you are asleep. The end of the article. Good night.